Hello and welcome to Biousage Lessons. Today we are going to be talking about our ventilation gas exchange system. So basically the ways that we're going to be getting gases supplied to our body or removed from our body. Okay? So there are three different names that may be confused when you talk about respiration, gas exchange, ventilation. First one, cell respiration. The second one, ventilation. The third one, gas exchange. In common language, people can use these words interchangeably, but they have very specific meaning when you talk about that to express what's happening into the body. So cell respiration, you have already studied that in biochemistry, is the breakdown of organic molecules releasing energy. Usually they require oxygen, and that's why we say that people are doing respiration to get oxygen. Actually, they are doing ventilation gas exchange to get oxygen to be able to make their tissues to do cell respiration. Ventilation is the mechanic mechanism of putting air in and out of our body. For example, inhaling and exhaling are processes that happen through ventilation. Gases go in, gases go out of the lungs by the process of ventilation. And gas exchange is actually getting the oxygen from the air into our blood, taking that blood into the tissue, the oxygen into the tissue, and then getting carbon dioxide from the tissue to the blood, and then from the blood to the air in the lungs, and we ventilate it out. So these here are the three names that you need to do. Okay, so one very common require that you need to be able to do is to distinguish between ventilation, gas exchange, and respiration. So first thing is, why do we need ventilation system if we are surrounded by gases? Many organisms, many animals, they don't need a ventilation system. The planaria that you studied before, or even some little tiny little small frogs or earthworms, they don't need a ventilation system. So why would we require a ventilation system? First thing, when we took land, we made our skin dry to avoid losing water. Very good. So we can live in land without losing water, but then our skin is dry and therefore is mostly impermeable to gases. For a surface to be good to exchange gases, it needs to be moist or wet. Okay, so that's one thing. Small amphibians, very tiny little frogs or salamanders with moist skin, they can exchange gases through the skin. So some of them exchange even more gases through the skin than they manage to exchange gas through the lungs, the very simple lungs they have, because they have a moist skin. Okay? But even if we had a moist skin, we wouldn't be able to do much gas exchange through our skin. We are too big. Okay? The tissues are way too far from the air. Usually 1 millimeter is the limit for gases to dissolve and to diffuse. Our body has much more than 1 millimeter thick for gases from the atmosphere to be able to enter our body. We could have a moist skin with lots of capillaries just under it, so the gases could be permeated through the capillaries to the blood by our skin. However, we go back again, we are too big, and by being too big, we have the other problem, in addition to 1 millimeter being the maximum rate for diffusion. We have a small surface area, which is our skin, when compared to all body volume, to all our metabolism. So we have a way too high metabolism, a way too big volume to the amount of skin we have. It's pure surface area to volume ratio, SAV. You studied this before, big structures, big animals don't have enough surface area to be able to exchange gases. So small frogs are capable of doing most of their gas exchange to the skin. But big frogs, they cannot. They need a lot of gas exchange to be done to the lungs. Okay, so this is one. Actually, this is the reason why we need a ventilation system. Our skin is dry and our skin is not big enough to exchange all the gases that we would need. Now, how our ventilation system looks like, what it looks like. So I'm making a little drawing here. It's a schematic drawing to show you the idea. Our nose, mouth, and everything going to the lungs, so all the structure is being drawn here for you. And I'm going to be labeling it. So this here is our nasal cavity. Actually, the nose would be entering air through there. There we have our mouth. Okay, it's not a beautiful mouth over there, but this is a mouth cavity that gets connected together with our nasal cavity, and the air can enter through our mouth or through our nose. Okay. After the mouth, we have a little flap called epiglottis. This epiglottis is a flap that when we swallow, for the food to go to the esophagus, it closes, so the food doesn't enter in the wrong place. If by a mistake or a lack of coordination of your part, you make food to go to the wrong place over here, then you're going to immediately cough and you're going to have a gagging reflex to put that stuff out. To avoid that from happening, we have the epiglottis that closes this way over there. The food has to go to the esophagus, as you saw there in the digestive system, and the air is going to pass through the vocal box and then it's going to get into the trachea. The British, they call it a windpipe. It's the pipe to transfer wind to inside of us. The trachea, we have one, goes down and branches into two bronchus. You have actually one bronchus, another bronchus, two bronchi. Okay, the bronchus is the first division of the trachea. You have two bronchi. And then the bronchus get divided into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller bronchioles, smaller and smaller and smaller tubes that are kept open by cartilage. It's an open tube. And in the end of the bronchus, you're going to have the alveolus, which is the place that we have the gas exchange. This here is the left lung, this here on the other side is the right lung, and just underneath we have here a muscle called diaphragm that helps to do the ventilation that we're going to be seeing in a while. Okay, so you need to be able to draw and label a diagram of the ventilation system. This is a very good, quite simple diagram of the ventilation system for you to draw. However, in this one, it doesn't show the alveolus. So if you do the drawing, what you can do is to make a little enlargement to show what would be in the very end here, a little bag in the very end of a bronchus. So we have here a bronchiole that ends up in a tiny little bag called alveolus. You have one alveolus, many alveoli. The alveolus is surrounded by a capillary network. So capillaries, they bring blood that comes from a tiny little artery to the capillary, and then it goes to a tiny little vein to pass blood through our lungs so we can exchange gases from the air to our lungs and from to the blood, and then from the blood to the air in our lungs to put out. So this is the structure, how it looks like. So pretty drawing here for you, so you can see all the stuff that I showed you before. And here, similar drawing, showing here bronchus and actually many alveoli, because actually the alveolus, not only one, you have many alveolus over there that are these little bags in the end of a bronchiole. And as you can see here, you have a bunch of capillaries, many capillaries in a capillary network surround the alveoli. Okay, so here one more drawing for you. We have here the bronchus. Actually, this is a bronchiole that's been divided into alveoli, 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 and all surrounded by capillary in a capillary network. Another diagram here for you, so you can see the structure of the lung. One interesting thing for you to know is that we have two types of pneumocytes. Pneumo is air site cells, so the cells of the air, the cells of the lungs. The flattened ones like this here, they're called pneumocyte type 1. They're very flattened, very, 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 very thin, and they are going to be making more than 70% of the structure of the alveolus, and they are the ones that the air have to cross, to move through, to be able to then cross the capillary and get into the blood. So the air, for example here O2, is going to be able to get through the pneumocyte type 1, to get through the capillary network, to get to the red blood cell, so the oxygen can be carried into the blood. In order to be able to diffuse, it has to pass through a mucus. There is a lining of mucus over here, so the gases can diffuse. Remember, the skin has to be wet, so the inside of our lungs is wet with a mucus that's produced by the pneumocytes type 2. So I'm going to be making here another color once in a while here. There are pneumocytes type 2. They are less than 30% of the cells, and they produce the mucus, which is a surfactant. It's a mucus that can not only diffuse gases through it, but it also lowers the surface tension, so it avoids the sides of the lungs to touch and get glued by the superficial tension of water. Remember, mucus is liquid, liquid is mainly water. If it was pure water, the superficial tension would be too high, and the two sides would collapse and they wouldn't be able to open. So in order to avoid that, the mucus is not only good to diffuse gases, but also it's good to avoid collapsing. It contains surfactants. Okay, so this is the way that things go, and you should then now be able to explain the mechanism of ventilation. How do we put oxygen in? How do we put carbon dioxide out of the alveolus? So the process is going to be using very simple physics. It has to do with pressure, it has to do with volume. So, P, V, and RT, the gas loss. So the volume, the pressure are going to be the most important stuff over here. Basically, we are going to be using internal and external intercostal muscles to be able to move our rib cage, increasing or decreasing the volume of our thorax. When we change the volume, we change the pressure. So if we increase the volume, we reduce the pressure, we cause a suction with a kind of a vacuum inside. If we want to expel air, we need to increase the pressure. So to increase the pressure, we reduce the volume of the thorax, increase the pressure, and the air moves out. Simple as that. The diaphragm may also play a role here. You're going to see that in drawings in a while. Abdominal muscles, they can also take place, but they will do that especially in the forced exhalation. So here we have a diagram. Let's show this diagram enlarged over here. Now we have this diagrams enlarged. The external intercostal muscles, they are over here. They are the ones that are going to be making the ribs to contract. They are outside of the ribs, and when they contract, they make the entire rib cage to move up. And when it moves up, it increases the volume. If the external intercostal muscle relax, here they relax, the rib cage moves down, reduce the volume. So the main muscle for inhaling, exhaling, one of the two main muscles are external intercostal muscle. Contracting causes inhalation because it moves the rib cage up, increasing the volume. Also the diaphragm, when it's contracted, you can see here it contracted, it moves down, increase the volume of the thorax, reduce the pressure, and causing inhalation. In the expiration, in exhalation, the external intercostal muscles relax, so the rib cage moves down, reduce the volume, and the diaphragm relax, so the space in the thorax also gets reduced, increase the pressure, and cause exhalation. So those are the two most important muscles for inspiration and expiration. External intercostal muscle and diaphragms contracting cause inhalation, relaxing cause exhalation. The external intercostal muscle have an antagonist, which is the opposite. That is the internal intercostal muscle, that they do the opposite job of the external. So that's easy to remember. Whatever the external does, the internal does the opposite. So in inhalation, the internal intercostal muscle relax. In exhalation, it contracts. And in addition to that, in forced inhalation, we may contract abdominal muscle, which squeezes our intestines up, helping to increase the pressure and force an exhalation in our thorax. Okay, so this is how it goes. The rib cage expands, and because the external muscles contracts, and you have a bigger volume, smaller pressure, inhalation. When the muscles relax, the rib cage gets down, smaller volume, bigger pressure, exhalation. In addition, contracted, this color is not so pretty, so let's do this one here. Contracted diaphragm, inhalation. Relaxed diaphragm, exhalation. So you need to be able to explain this. Here you have pictures to show you the muscles that are working for inhalation, exhalation. We are going to be discussing this more in class, but for the moment, I hope you have enjoyed, and let's talk more about this in class. Do this little quiz. See you there. Bye-bye.